with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Nicholas Boni, writer, photographer, musician based in Brooklyn, and Cea Weaver, tenant organizer with Housing Justice for All in New York, about a new piece of legislation that could provide social housing for the state of New York. Then, John Samuelsen, international president of the Transport Workers Union, about the potential for a strike amongst Boston commuter rail workers. Also on the program today, as of last night, Biden and Trump clinched the nominations. The earliest, but for the year 2000, the first time in, 100 years where two people have been presidents before? 1956 was the first time there was a rematch. Also, uncommitted earned 7.5% of the Washington state vote last night. That's 15 times more than uncommitted got in 2020. Just moments ago, the House votes to sort of ban TikTok. Yesterday, Hur's testimony blows up in Republican faces. But it turns out Hur's memory also is a little faulty. Speaking, of course, of the former special prosecutor. Meanwhile, a judge in Fulton County pares down Trump's indictments. He's only facing 35 of them now. Republican Ken Buck announces surprise exit from Congress, dropping the Republican majority again. And file this in the type of nerd story that I can't get enough of. A federal judiciary committee reforms its rules to limit venue shopping, hamstringing conservative culture war legal strategy. Competing discharge petitions make their way through the Republican-controlled House on Ukrainian war funding. And Patagonia workers in Nevada form a union and find out that management is okay with that. We may call the Starbucks dividend. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is, in the words of my wrapping up her vacationing co-host, Hump Day. A lot of people don't realize that. Emma, how old is Emma now? Like, it was only like 29, right?
She'll be 30 in April.
She'll be 30 in April. Okay. Well, that's why people are surprised that she actually coined Hump Day, because people think it's been around for a lot longer than it has. But it's really only been around for about 16, 18 months, as far as I know, that phrase.
We haven't been doing that joke for about 3 times longer than that.
That's actually true, probably. Yeah, I guess we've been doing that for about 3 years. Just want to say hello to the Discord at majoritydiscord.com. And also a hello to Star Fox. Apparently has a new job, which is great. and can't watch the show, listen to the show live. But glad to hear that Starfucks is doing better. You can check out our Discord, majoritydiscord.com. I don't know what our membership is. I haven't checked it recently, but it's over 10,000. Well over 10,000. Crazy. Huge. So the House just voted, and it's sort of it's sort of stunning. The idea of banning TikTok came up, I don't know, a couple of years ago during the Trump administration. And the law, just to be clear, to the extent that we know it's in it, because the thing has sort of come out of nowhere to get passed through committee and then get to the floor of the House and voted on already. And it is not a ban per se. It is a requirement that a foreign government cannot own a massive stake in a social media company. And so that if TikTok is going to remain, it needs to be the Chinese government needs to divest from it. Now, the problem with this is that TikTok has like over 100 million users in the United States. Its value is astronomical in that world of tech valuations. And so the problem is, well, aside from what one thinks about curtailing who owns what based upon nationalistic grounds, the other problem is that who's going to buy this? It's going to end up being some type of like Meta or Google or whatnot. Now, with all that said, it's unclear whether it really has a chance in the Senate. My guess is it probably doesn't, but we shall see. And frankly, I'm not sure I like the regulation of who can own it based upon national terms. But there's another way to skin this cat, with all due respect to cats. And that is go in and say, no data scraping. You got to charge. You're going to charge for this service, maybe a little bit, or maybe you can have ads, but the data scraping, no. Or if you're going to data scrape, you can't sell it under these circumstances. And the algorithm, incidentally, algorithms, we're going to knock out 3/4 of the algorithms. There's a lot of things that we could do using antitrust laws and just sort of the power of the government. When you contemplate social media is so important, people are up in arms about it. It is a tacit agreement that we're talking about something that's closer to a common carrier than anything else. I mean, this is sort of the irony of all the libertarians who are going to be out there complaining about it. They're going to be complaining about it as if it's some big authoritarian, censorious type of thing. But what they're implicitly saying is that this is a common carrier. And if it's a common carrier, then this should be heavily regulated. It's just now we're just arguing about what are the most sensible regulations. And that's when they go like, wait a second, that's private property.
Yeah.
So there are interesting different sort of like strands of what's going on here. But if you want to hear the most bat crap crazy reason to ban TikTok, we have it for you. Now, a lot of this reminds me of like the stuff that was happening with heavy metal back in the late 90s. Tipper Gore and Joe Lieberman and Hadassah Lieberman were getting together and trying to rid us all of the satanic messages that were driving children insane in the 90s from heavy metal music and this thing called rap, which we had back then. But here is Steve Bannon. And who is he with? Oh, I know this dude. Who's this dude?
Raheem Kassam. He now works for Real America's Voice, but he was the former editor-in-chief of Breitbart News.
Right.
London.
Okay. That's what. Yes, I thought I recognized him. And here's Steve Bannon, who apparently fell asleep in the tanning booth.
And this is why the TikTok, I'm going to add another element to it now. TikTok is such an important fight because TikTok, as Matt Gaetz told me in July of 2022, he says, hey, we're not going to get the 30, 35 seats. You're not going to get the 25 seats because they're going to close the gap because of Dobbs, these young women, and TikTok. He said TikTok is and today they're going to give a presentation at 1 o'clock, secured presentation to the House to talk about election interference by the CCP on TikTok. Just one last thing I'll add, and this is the Taylor Swift situation. I don't believe in coincidences. Her tour, which is the biggest tour, I think, in music history, stops on 20 August and doesn't pick back up until mid-November, early to mid-November, fully available after Labor Day to do whatever. And she's pretty adamant. She got
pause it. I just want you to just pause right there. Just no. Go back just 1 second. Just go back one second. One more. Because when this guy says when Bannon says pausing it from August 20th through the election, free to do whatever. You know what I would do if I wanted to employ Taylor Swift to help my campaign? I'd have her do concerts.
You want to talk about me?
I would have her do concerts and talk about me because instead, what we're going to do, instead of having Taylor Swift collect tens of thousands of people in a room as a captured audience, we're going to have her not do that.
Yeah. Instead, I'd fly around like those B-52 bombers carrying nukes just ready to bomb.
Exactly. We just have her sidelined just in case we want to have a concert.
Deploy Taylor.
It's so... I don't believe in coincidences. I don't either. You're just an idiot. It's not just that you're saying stupid things. It's that you're a stupid, insane person. But continue. And I love the look on the Breitbart British guy's face because he's still like, holy crap.
The Taylor Swift connection.
I thought stuff was stupid in Britain. This is really, we've upgraded.
And this is why the TikTok, I'm going to add another element to it now. TikTok is such an important fight because
he's got a nod.
As Matt Gaetz told me in July
watch his face. Watch his face.
He says, hey, we're not going to get the 30, 35 seats. You're not going to get the 25 seats because they're going to close the gap because of Dobbs, these young women, and TikTok. He said TikTok is today they're going to give a presentation at 1 o'clock, secured presentation to the House to talk about election interference by the CCP on TikTok. Just one last thing I'll add. And this is the Taylor Swift situation. I don't believe in coincidences. Her tour, which is the biggest tour, I think, in music history.
Am I going to have to keep a straight face throughout this entire thing?
Doesn't pick back up until mid-November, early to mid-November, fully available after Labor Day to do whatever. And she's pretty adamant. She got involved in the 22 midterms. And Taylor Swift,
he looks
with
like
TikTok in back of it, is a formidable presence. And anybody that doesn't believe that, I don't think is looking at the demographic and the power she has with that demographic. Raheem Kassam, your thoughts on all this?
Well, you're a lunatic. How's that? Yeah, I have a feeling I know what Taylor Swift is going to do after August, after her tours are over. She's going to go to some Caribbean island. Or then maybe she'll go to Reykjavik for a 3-week trek up, somewhere. How's that for a coincidence? But meanwhile, the TikTok stuff passes in the House. We'll look deeper into it if it seems to have a chance in the Senate. But again, there's a lot of opportunity to regulate these companies. And I think to a certain extent, we won't see it pass in the Senate because I think they're afraid on some level, there's going to be antitrust, real bad antitrust implications to this because somebody's going to buy TikTok. And the other thing is, I think Chuck Schumer's daughter works for Facebook. And once you do this with TikTok, maybe you can do other things with Facebook. We'll see. But we should say that your favorite progressives and some surprise people in some instances voted against this. And there were some Republicans, to be fair, who also voted against it. I'm not sure if they own stock in it in some fashion or what that is, but I don't know. I'm still sort of blown away by how quickly this legislation seemed to arise out of nowhere and then pass. They didn't even have a chance to read it. You know what else they could vote on? Keeping the government open. That might be an idea. I don't know. The government shuts down and there's no TikTok, then we don't have a chance to tell anybody what's going on.
censoring the fiddler while Rome burns.
Folks, in a moment we'll be talking to Nicholas Boni and Cea Weaver about housing in New York State and a potential piece of legislation which could address it. But first, before we get to that duo, I want to talk about another duo. That being you and Shopify. Yes. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you at every single stage of your business. From the, I'm just about to launch my online shop stage, to the first real life in-person sale, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify is there to help you grow. Doesn't matter whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, or if your merch page has the final day of opportunity to order the Get Out the Void shirts. It doesn't matter. Shopify helps you sell everywhere. They have their all-in-one e-commerce platform, which integrates with their in-person point of sale system. Doesn't matter wherever or whatever you're selling, Shopify has you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. In other words, it works and it's easy. It's easy for the buyer, and it's also super easy for the seller. You could sell more with less effort thanks to their Shopify Magic, which is their AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind things like Allbirds and Rothy's and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way, because businesses that grow with Shopify. I can tell you that, I've told the story many times, but when it came time to do a merch store, I put it off. It's going to be too hard. It's going to be too complicated. We're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to respond to sort of jokes on the show that we want to integrate into a t-shirt. And to Get Out the Void is the perfect example of it. It was just an offhand word. All of a sudden, bingo, it's available for sale on our Shopify site, shop.majorityreportradio.com.
John Voight's schedule also open in the fall.
There you go. But the bottom line is that this is A, it's super easy turnkey if you got a small business. And B, if you're all of a sudden your small business grows and grows and grows, Shopify is completely built to scale with you. You can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority. All lowercase, go to shopify.com/majority right now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/majority. And also, lastly, sponsoring the program today, Aura. What is Aura? Aura Frames, in fact. It is the best remote digital frame that you can buy. And that's not just me saying that. That's Wirecutter. That's The Strategist. And it's wired. And for me, the reason is because it is great. Is it a great gift, not just for, folks, I don't know, your parents, your mom, your grandparents, your brothers or sisters or family that live away, or friends to keep in touch. But it's also exceptionally easy for your gift recipient. Doesn't matter if they're completely technologically ignorant, or in some way their technological development is arrested in some fashion. You can load up pictures on this frame and even put in the Wi-Fi information before you even take it out of the box. They can do it multiple different ways, but there's a code on the side of the box, or a QR code. You can load up all this stuff on your app and send the pictures. It's super easy to do. I've got it right here on mine. I'm sending pictures to my sisters. Here's some pictures. I'm not going to show you which ones because, they're private. But comes with unlimited storage, simple controls on the frame. You can upload as many photos as you want. And if your recipient happens to be technically proficient, they can pick the perfect one they want. See why it was named that #1 digital frame. Right now, you can save on the perfect gift that keeps on giving by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners can get $20 off their best-selling frame with the code majority. That's AURA frames.com, promo code majority. Terms and conditions apply. We will put the links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions, as well as at majority.fm. And a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. If you want the free show free of commercials, help this show survive and thrive by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Okay, quick break. We'll be right back with Nicholas Boni and Cea Weaver. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining me now, Nicholas Boni. He's a writer, photographer, musician based in Brooklyn, who's written a piece in the Jacobin. Social housing for New York is on the table. And also with us is Cea Weaver, tenant organizer with Housing Justice for All in New York. Welcome to the both of you. Nicholas, let's just start with you. What is the housing situation in New York State? I mean, I think people know, but give us some numbers.
Yeah. First of all, hello. Thanks for having us on. It's great to come on and be able to talk about this very dire situation that we are all living in. So, New York State and New York City are in the middle of an affordability crisis. I think that's something that could have been credibly said at any point in the last, 50 to 100 years, but we're especially seeing a big problem with it right now. We are looking at a really dire lack of available, affordable housing with stable rents. We have seen some really poor investment from the state over the last few decades into the construction of new permanently affordable housing. The vehicle for that in the past couple of decades has been through the 421A program, which is a tax abatement for private developers to build mostly these new shiny luxury buildings that we see go up and rent a small proportion of them at affordability rates, affordability in big quotes, that are not affordable to a majority of people and can often require you to have a certifiable income that is close to or above six figures to get into these supposedly affordable units.
Yeah, I should say we broadcast, almost like in the heart of that. I mean, we look around. There's a ton of new building that's going up, particularly in downtown Brooklyn and in the Gowanus area. And it's all got that dynamic. To get in there, 20% of it is there, maybe a certain percentage under the median, and then some is like some affordable is actually goes higher than the median, which is sort of blinkered. Before we get back to, so that's sort of the problem. And we should say this is both a problem in New York City. It's a problem across the country. What I think is a little bit unique about this era of unaffordability, and a lot of this is coming, is even made more, I think, intense because following the 2008 financial crisis, there was just building halted for an extended period of time. But if you go up the Hudson River to places like Ulster County and Greene County and Sullivan County, we're seeing a lot of really a lot of squeezing of people there. There's a lot of problems with housing affordability, which is a relatively new phenomenon, I think in part, sort of like in the wake of COVID. But with that said, Cea Weaver, you're a housing justice for all organizer, a tenant organizer. What does your organization do?
Hi, thanks for having me. So Housing Justice for All is a statewide coalition of local grassroots tenants' rights organizations that are, bringing together tenants to fight for more affordable housing. So we're a statewide network, and we bring together these organizations to fight for stronger tenant protections and more deeply affordable, decommodified public sector housing in Albany. New York State, like many states, is a relatively weak home rule place, which means that most housing policy actually is dictated not at the level of the mayor or the city council, but the governor and the state legislature. Unsurprisingly, that means that the real estate industry is regularly the largest donors to New York State politicians, and our goal as Housing Justice for All is to be a counterweight to that power. We want to challenge the real estate industry over who gets to dictate affordable housing policy and housing policy in the state, and we have had some strong victories, and we hope to have more with our new proposal for social housing.
Yeah, Nicholas, why don't you just walk us through, what the outlines of that legislation is, and it is, and where in the process it is. Well, just tell us a little bit about the legislation first, and then we'll get to where it's at.
Yeah, sure. So the bill that we are talking about, that the article is about, and that we're advocating for here, would create the Social Housing Development Authority. So this would be a statewide housing authority that would be empowered to rezone, rehabilitate distressed properties, acquire new land, and construct new publicly built, publicly owned, deeply affordable housing that is under democratic control. This is different from existing public housing authorities like NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, for example, in that the base of tenants that would be this would be available to is much wider in terms of income limits. NYCHA constructed a bunch of affordable housing, but currently houses, I think I read that the average income in NYCHA properties is, we're talking about the poverty line or below. And so that causes a constant revenue issues with NYCHA, which leads to things like deferred maintenance and, some of the, as always, the underinvestment in this public good leads to this public perception that the government is failing when what it's suffering from is a dire lack of investment and revenue. So the Social Housing Development Authority, the units that are going to be managed by this authority are going to be available to a wider base of people in New York. So you don't have to be the absolutely most destitute and impoverished person that we can possibly find to be eligible to enter this thing. We want to see a mix of incomes and backgrounds, and that will really create a more dependable and self-sustaining revenue stream, alongside the authority's ability to interact with existing public housing authorities. But
so,
the other
so let me just see if I could get you to just weigh in this. So this is going to be self-sustaining ultimately, but it needs essentially like seed investment. And we're talking about how much money do we need as more or less, I guess, what would constitute a line of credit for this. And ostensibly, we're losing billions of dollars annually because of all these sort of tax abatements that we're providing in the system that we're using now. So that has like a more hidden or obscured cost. This would have an upfront, essentially, line of credit, but would ultimately become far more sustainable. How much of that money is necessary? And then, also, what would be the process of this agency coming in? How would they would they buy distressed properties? Would they buy, how would that work?
Yeah, those are two great questions. So the first question is that we really want this entity, this social housing authority, to be able to scale and to be able to produce a lot of housing. We think that that's really important in order to sort of challenge the speculative role that the real estate industry plays in our city and in our state. And so we want it to be able to compete with the private market. And we think that's what will make it successful, is if there's a true public sector alternative to our existing speculative and profit-driven housing system. We're asking for a $5 billion sort of initial investment. With that $5 billion, we hope to be able to set up and staff the agency, but also build new housing across the state, as well as acquire distressed housing across the state. The mechanisms for acquiring distressed housing could look different on a building by building basis. In some cases, what happens is tenants form a tenant association. They have a scofflaw landlord or someone who's not making repairs, and they could pressure, using organizing tactics, they could pressure to the Social Housing Development Authority to take over their homes, to buy their homes. In other cases, it might happen through like a legal process. A couple of days ago, one of the most notorious slumlords in the city, his name is Ob Shalom. He was arrested because he is treating his tenants so badly, hundreds of thousands of open code violations. In cases like that, where the city is actively pursuing already sort of litigation and enforcement mechanisms against the landlord, the SHDA is an option. We can say, hey, you are not maintaining this building, and we are the city of New York. We have an interest in making sure that housing is well maintained, and we're going to take this building away from you.
Would you need a host of like a new suite of regulations that sort of function maybe in the same way that, let's say, National Labor Relations Board says there's unfair labor practices. In this instance, there's unfair housing practices. You've made these violations. That in and of itself, we don't need to, once we've established you've made these violations, you've made, I don't know, three strikes, you're out. We're going to pay you the market value, I guess, of the property. Is that what happens at that point, and take it over, or do they?
That's a good question. We don't really think that we need new regulations to make that happen right now, because the city of New York already has this enforcement power for many, many years. I don't know, if you think about the Lower East Side in, the 1970s and tenants who are squatting their buildings. Those buildings later became, shared equity cooperatives. And there's a long history of similar things like that happening in New York through different iterations of public policy and public programs that allow tenants and community members to sort of actively intervene when a landlord is behaving badly to bring that building into the affordable housing universe. The problem with our existing programs is that they don't really have the capital to scale. And so they end up operating at a pretty a hyper local neighborhood based level, where tenants are organizing for years and years and years and years and years to get the city to take advantage of things like the 7A program or things like the third party transfer program. And they're difficult to use because they're so small scale. The SHDA, to me, offers an opportunity to take those existing programs and sort of supercharge them so that we can be supporting tenants and moving faster than our existing programs to bring things in and to, take over a lot of distressed housing. In some cases, yes, I think we're imagining that the city that the Social Housing Development Authority would pay a market transaction for that building, but there's all sorts of things that organized tenants can do to drive down that market price, especially if we have strong rent controls. We are discouraging speculation through other public policy. Tenants are suing the landlord, so this case is like the building is less attractive to other market participants because there's a lot of liability associated with the lawsuit. And so there's things that organized tenants can do to sort of make a deal more possible. And that's the kind of organizing that is going to have to happen in order to make the SHDA live up to the vision.
And does the agency sell essentially the property to the tenants, or do they retain ownership of it? And what are the tax implications? Are we still paying property tax on these properties?
These are such good questions. You're really getting to the heart of housing policy in our city and state. What we're envisioning is that the SHDA would continue to hold the land underneath the building, and that would be that would allow it to provide its role as sort of stewarding this property and making sure it is well maintained, making sure it has the money to run, and it would allow us to pool the sort of property, the income at that property with other buildings across the state that the SHDA might own. But the tenants would create a corporation, a cooperation, and they would each own, collectively, they would form a tenant association, and that tenant association, residence association, would collectively own the building that is sitting on top of the land. That's what's called
and we should tell people,
cooperative.
People who are not in New York should understand that, like, we have co-ops, you know, I don't know what percentage, but a ton of the buildings in this city, there's probably more co-ops than there are condos. So this concept of basically you're leasing your apartment and you get shares. What you're buying is shares in a co-op. They give you a certain number of shares. Those shares correspond with your apartment. You're actually technically leasing it from the cooperative there. Nicholas, where else has this ever been done? This type of arrangement?
Yeah, so this is not a new radical idea that we are pulling out of thin air, but this is a model of housing construction and ownership that has been tested in the past and exists and is already successfully operating elsewhere. There are, in the United States, there's an example of a suburb outside of Washington, D.C. that has constructed a very similar kind of housing authority in Maryland, which acts as the majority controller of some of the new housing that is going up, and as a majority stakeholder in these buildings has major sway in things like where the revenues get directed once the costs have been met and what the rents are. In the article, the biggest example that I talk about is actually in Vienna, Austria, though. And this is one of the most fully realized examples that we have out there that we can look to and kind of model ourselves after. So in Vienna, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but I think it's something like 80% of residents in Vienna qualify for public placement in publicly owned, publicly democratically controlled housing or social housing. I think the income limit is something like 70,000 euros a year. If you make that or less, you are eligible to get into these properties. And then once you are in it, they don't check again. It's not a constant means testing. If you make $1 over some poverty line that we have set, then you're out. And so the result is you have these communities that have been living in these housing structures since, for decades or for generations. And that's something that, if you look around New York today, you look in neighborhoods like, Bed-Stuy and Greenpoint and Williamsburg and, tons of neighborhoods in New York. You see these communities that have been living here the Lower East Side, that have been living there for generations that now are being thrown out because their rents are just skyrocketing and there's no stability in place, and there's not that much. The real estate lobby has won that battle, and they're losing their homes. And so if you look at, there's a couple of different examples. There's another one in Atlanta too, but or in Atlanta, they're trying to form a very similar housing authority. But yeah, this is not a new idea. This is not something that we're just doing on a wing and a prayer. This is a method that we know works, and especially when done in conjunction with things like rent regulations and good cause eviction laws, can really radically cut down on the speculative, speculation on buildings and, let alone.
It's a proven concept.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Lastly, Cea, where are we with this legislation? Like how down the line? I would imagine the biggest fight against this legislation is coming from the real estate lobby that is focused around New York City. But this would have real benefit, it seems to me, and would work even less with less friction in, the rest of the state, where you don't have the sort of like the same type of like a real estate lobby, and you can alleviate housing crises that are happening in some of these other, more semi-rural counties with just a couple of projects. But where are we legislatively? Like, what are the chances of this, and where is it in the context of like the way that Albany operates?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you say something that I really strongly agree with, that the potential that this model has to do development in places where like Utica or Buffalo or Syracuse, like places where the math is such that you really have to spur gentrification in order to entice a developer to build, and the negative impacts that would cause for low-income renters in those places. I love this concept. I love the concept of the public sector developer, because it's just as easy for a publicly motivated company to be building in distressed Western New York cities as it is in Bed-Stuy or Crown Heights, some of the most gentrified parts of our state. So it's great. In terms of where we are in the process, we introduced the bill in February, and a lot of people signed on. It really made a splash. And we are in the process right now of recruiting a majority of co-sponsors who will, fight for this bill to happen in the state budget. We're already seeing some progress. The Senate included some sort of similar concepts to what's in our SHDA bill and sort of their version of the budget that came out this Monday. So they said in their budget, we should create a new state entity that should be building on state-owned land. They sort of narrowed the vision to just build on existing state-owned land. So we're heartened to see that there's like growing support, including from places like the legislative leadership in the state Senate. But we don't want to limit the proposal to state-owned land. We don't want to limit the proposal to like the handful of sites that New York already has. And we don't want to limit the proposal to our existing finance programs at HCR. So I think we're already making some key progress. I'm really heartened by how quickly it's moving. And I think that, it's going to be a several years fight to make the thing passable in the form that we need it to pass in. And I think we're up to it.
Folks, if folks living in New York, call your assembly people, call your senators, and tell them that you are in favor of what is the does it have a bill number in the Senate and then the House, or at the very least Social Housing Development Authority, promoting that? But is there a number?
It does have a bill number. So the bill number is S8494 in the state Senate, and it's sponsored by Senator Cordell Clear, who's amazing, and A9088 in the Assembly. It's sponsored by Emily Gallagher in the State Assembly. She is a member of our Socialists in Office Committee in the Democratic Socialists of America.
Great. All right. And if we can get those numbers, we'll put them in the podcast and YouTube description and on majority.fm. Nicholas Boni, Cea Weaver, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to John Samuelsen, International President of the Transport Workers Union, about an interesting fight that is happening in Boston. And I should say also like in the and west and north and south, in terms of the commuter rail. It's going to give me another opportunity to reference Worcester. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland is out today. Joining us now, John Samuelsen is the international president of the Transport Workers Union. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
All right. Work this out for me now. Are you the president of the International Transport Workers Union, or the international president of the Transport Workers Union? And what does that mean? Because this is this is a part of the story right now in terms of what's happening in Boston.
Yeah, my title is International President of the Transport Workers Union. We do have 104 locals across the country in air, rail, transit, universities, utilities, bike share, which we do in Boston as well. And anything that moves, we organize. So TW Local 2054 is one of our locals at the commuter rail and MBTA, and we're in this fight with them to win a contract against this creepy Keolis.
Okay, yeah. So let's get into because there's an interesting dynamic here as to what that union needs to be able to to possibly strike. But let's back up a little bit. The MBTA in Boston, they have like a subway system. It actually goes above ground for a lot of the city into sort of like, I guess, a trolley, I guess you would call it, and increasingly a commuter rail. I know this because it's changed Worcester, as far as I can tell, my hometown. It's grown by like 50,000 people in the past 50 years. This deals more specifically with those commuter rail workers. Is that right?
Only the TW, our local 2054, only deals with the train mechanics and the coach cleaners on the commuter rail. And in fact, and there's a division only on the south side. And I'm not a Boston guy. We have a local president, an excellent local president named Ed Flaherty, who's leading things for us up there in Boston. I'm from Brooklyn. And so I'm here basically to lend the support of the International Union and throw all of our resources into this fight. There's a little over 100 members in 2054 in this fight against Keolis, but it may as well be the 155,000 members of the International, because those are the resources that we're bearing down into this fight right now.
All right. So first tell us about Keolis, because, you would expect a company that comes from France would get it a little bit more, you would expect, but not so much.
Yeah, ironically, they're doing something in Boston right now, which an American company would never get away with in France. An American company would get tossed out, and rightfully so. But this French multinational corporation can come to Boston and essentially undercut wages, abuse workers for lack of a better expression, underpay workers, cut working conditions, cut wages and conditions, and get away with it, and then brag about making a profit. In France, they'd get thrown out on their ear. So, and that's what Keolis has done. They've earned a profit in Boston on the commuter rails off the backs of workers. And in fact, they're being bankrolled by the American taxpayer and bringing profits back to France with them. And it's an outrage. And when I say that, a coach cleaner at the MBTA commuter rail makes in the neighborhood of $19 an hour. So they qualify for food stamps. They qualify for Section 8 housing. That's all supplemented by the United States taxpayer. So we're supplementing a profiteering French multinational corporation to come in, earn profits off of the backs of the U.S. taxpayer by kind of Walmarting the MBTA and its workforce, and then bringing profits home to France. So it's an outrage. Everybody should be outraged, not only in Boston, but everywhere.
So how long, so what has been the status? Have they had a contract, or they've been out of contract for a while? Like, how long has this situation been going on in terms of like where we're at now?
It's been going on 250 days as of today. So 10 months or so, something like that.
And so for 250 days, they've been without a contract. And this dynamic, and you got to explain this to me. they need authorization to almost like separate from the national TWU to take a labor action. Is that right?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no,
All right.
no.
Now walk me through this because I find it a little bit
So
confusing.
not at all. So the national TWU is the signatory on the contract. So I'm the signatory on the contract. I'm heavily involved in this contract. The local is the day-to-day representative in Boston, but I'm the signatory on the contract. I have the locals back 100%. The difference here, unlike the regular transit workers at the MBTA on the T, is that we're under the NMB, the Railway Labor Act, and we have the right.
Okay.
So that's the difference. That there's a process that's guided by the Railway Labor Act that ultimately and hopefully will result in the TWU being able to take strike action if we can't come to satisfactory terms with Keolis, which is actually controlled by the MBTA. And again, shame on both of them if it gets to that point. But if it does, we're damn sure going to take strike action.
Okay. So what's the next steps? Do these workers vote to authorize a strike? Has that already happened, or does that need to happen? And like where are we? What are the next steps? 250 days out from a contract.
Yeah, so this workforce in Boston is absolutely going to go on strike. If we have to go on strike, there's bargaining going on. Perhaps there's a glimmer that the bargaining will result in a contract that's satisfactory to the workers. If that happens, of course, it would be our fondest hope that it does happen. That, of course, it'll end immediately, and we will do what we want to do, which is work and provide service on the commuter rail. We believe that there is a chance that could happen, and if it does happen, it's only because of the organizing that we're currently doing right now in and around the MBTA, political organizing workers. Organizing them to fight back against Keolis, which is exactly where this is going to end up in if we don't get that contract.
Where is Keolis? Do they operate any other commuter rails around the country? This country?
I'm not sure if they operate any other rails in this country, but they have extensive operations internationally, and they have an abysmal, horrific record. And in fact, I'm about to embark on a series of meetings with other workforces internationally that they represent to begin to get a better grasp of what they're all about. And all the reports that I'm getting back thus far are that they're an absolutely horrific employer. So we're dealing with an entity that has a horrific reputation in terms of representing workers employing workers internationally.
And so where are the leverage points? I mean, are you guys meeting with officials in Boston? Do they have much control over this? I mean, how much authority did they cede to a private company to run something that is a public service?
Yeah, so that's kind of the shame of it. They have the MBTA, the Massachusetts DOT, and ultimately the governor of Massachusetts have total control over this. They have total control either through forthright political pressure or otherwise. They're the ones who granted Keolis the contract. They can intervene. They can threaten to take the contract away from Keolis. They can directly intervene. We expect that that's going to happen. If Keolis does not settle this contract promptly, the MBTA should absolutely not renew that contract. We're exploring through the federal government means through political means, a methodology which would prevent the MBTAs of the world, of the United States, not giving contracts to companies like Keolis, who do not promptly negotiate fair contracts with American workers. So there's a political element to this, which is very much part of the strategic approach we're taking here. It is quite outrageous. And so we are exploring all of those avenues alongside the traditional avenue of organizing our members to take direct action through striking the MBTA when we get to that point through the NMB process.
Like it strikes me that if I'm working, if I'm on a commuter rail and obviously the mechanics aren't public facing, they don't deal with the customers, but a lot of, I would imagine, your workers do. And commuters, they're taking that trip by definition on a daily basis. They're coming, they're going in, they're going back. How much are of your efforts are focused on like organizing and getting support from the users of the rail?
So we are going to be, so right now we're on the precipice of beginning a rider organizing campaign. We're going to wait to see what the bargaining is going to produce. We're going to wait to see what the last session produced from Keolis. If we do not get an appropriate response, we're going into a massive, intensive organizing campaign with the riders. We work and live alongside the riders in the communities in and around Boston. Those are the communities that we service. Those are the communities where we live. We fully expect that when the riders of the system understand how despicable Keolis has been in terms of paying conditions since they've gotten here, that the riders will stand with us when and if we have to take strike action against the MBTA and against Keolis.
Give me a sense of, and I get that you're going to be focusing on organizing in, amongst the riders, organizing in terms of like pressuring both Boston and Massachusetts governments that deal with this. But how much in the back of what you're doing, and I imagine this is a question for you, in terms of your work nationally, how much of like the National Labor Relations Board and their talk, I know there's been some talk anyways, of the idea that like, union recognition has been improving, and certainly the Starbucks thing helped it and whatnot. But the time between like a union is recognized or, when there is no contract, when workers are working without a contract, there's been talk about making it almost definitionally per se, if there's X number of days that have gone by without a contract, that's an unfair labor practice. Like how much of that is, are you guys working on trying to promote, trying to get in hand? Because that seems to me to be a pretty powerful weapon in dealing with management like this company, for example.
So you referenced the NLRB. We're dealing with the Railway Labor Act and the National Mediation Board. So the rules are not the same. The unfair labor practice that you referenced, they don't exist in the same way they exist under the NLRB. But everything that you're speaking about, we're addressing those with the Democrats nationally. We're addressing those in the state of Massachusetts. I think on a broader scale, the Democrats themselves, they really don't have any business. If the Democrats are what they want people to believe they are, they have no business contracting out public transit or commuter rail. They just don't. Commuter rail is a vital public service. It has no business going to a profiteering multinational company, either an American company or a foreign company. It's a vital public service. It goes right along sanitation, policing service, paramedic service. It should be in the hands of government. It should, as it is in most other American cities. In Massachusetts, which is controlled by the Democrats, there's no reason at all under the sun for them to be operating a system that's a commuter rail system predicated upon profiteering. It's ridiculous, and it actually goes against everything the Democrats should be standing for, period. And I think that debate is very much in play right now. We're going through a very similar fight in New York State against a New York State Democratic governor that's where it is run under the public umbrella. But very similar things are occurring, similar demands, a tax on pensions, a tax on wages, right at a moment in time where the Democrats are trying to retake the House of Representatives. It's actually quite outrageous. They're allowing workers to be abused simultaneously, telling folks that they're the party of workers, and it's outrageous.
Is this is this exclusively the purview in Massachusetts, anyways? The purview of the governor's office, or is this like? Does there have to be a statute that says we're going to allow a Keolis to come in? And has it always been a private entity, or was the commuter rail public before?
So Amtrak ran until 2003, and then there was the outrageously ridiculous decision, a decision against the public good to hand it over to private operators after 2003. And there's a direct correlation to wages and also at least over some period of years to the safety of the railroad itself after it went to privateers after 2003. And to answer your first part of your question, it's directly under control of the state of Massachusetts through the Massachusetts DOT and through the MBTA, which is controlled by the DOT. They could end the contract right now, bring it back in under the public umbrella. The Thatcherization, the Margaret Thatcherization of the commuter rails at the MBTA does not have to continue.
And when is their contract up? Do you know?
Their contract's up in like 2 years.
All right, interesting.
And it should end. There's really no reason for profiteering companies to be involved in public transportation, public transport in the United States. It doesn't work. And in fact, overseas, in England itself, much of it has been turned around. It's in the process of being turned around because they just don't go together. The pursuit of profit and public transportation, they're at odds with each other. Either you're providing a public service or you're pursuing profit. They don't go together. They go right against each other.
100%. And it's these decisions need to be made based upon what's going to help these communities again and not put money in their pockets. I just wonder, I'm curious because, we've had in Massachusetts, I say I grew up in Worcester, for much of this century, and going back until to probably Bill Weld, we've had almost exclusive Republican governors. And I wonder how much of this is an opportunity now that we have a Democratic governor in Massachusetts to apply those principles, like you say, should be second nature for Democrats, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the Democrats do things like embrace Republican concepts like privatization of public transit, which is an absolute bona fide public good. When the Democrats behave like Republicans, why would working people vote for the Democrats when they could just vote for the real thing, Republicans? And I think, that has been a phenomenon. Yep. When working people see Democrats, neoliberal Democrats, behave like Republicans, they vote for Republicans.
Yeah, I think you're right. John Samuelsen, really appreciate it. So what's the next thing we should look for? It's really just a question of this round of negotiations. And then if that doesn't work and if the Keolis continues to shortchange these workers, you guys start to mobilize a lot more.
Yeah, we're waiting on a response right now from the employer. If the employer delivers a substandard response, you're going to see the TW International alongside our local. We're gonna start organizing the workforce. We're going to continue to organize the workforce. We're going to begin aggressively organizing within the community, within the riders, and we're going to pursue full speed ahead the legal process toward full-blown strike action against the MBTA. And we're going to hold the Democrats accountable.
What can our listeners do to support you guys?
Well, I think as time goes on, as part of this over the next several weeks, there will be reach out from the TW in and around Boston about elements of support that the community can reach out and let Keolis and the MBTA and perhaps the state of Massachusetts and the political operation of Massachusetts, let them know how dissatisfied they are that Keolis is screwing the workforce on the commuter rails at the MBTA.
John Samuelsen, International President of the Transport Workers Union. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All right, folks. That's it for our free portion of the program.
Can I just shout out, it wasn't visible on the screen there, but John had a James Connolly, I believe, Irish labor activist from 100 years ago. Very cool to talk with people that have that
some sense of history.
Walk in that lineage.
Yeah, exactly. Far Twain. No, that guy was not from Massachusetts. From Brooklyn. people are asking for John Samuelsen to run for president. We'll see. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. If you can find another show out there that halfway through the week has already brought you information on the development of vaccines, of nonprofit vaccines, and a deep dive into the development of vaccines and COVID, and then I can't even remember what we did. Oh, and what's going on in Haiti, and then also speak to people who are trying to push for some type of significant housing reform.
I mean, let's be real. We've already done a full week of work.
Oh my God! What I would say, like probably 2 weeks of a different show. And then talking about union fights that are happening with transit workers. Then you should support that show. But if you can't find that show, you should support ours. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. And we give you stuff like members just got an extra 5% discount on cedar seeds. We are heading into, we're 2 weeks away from the 20th anniversary. Have you guys seen the pictures of the 20th anniversary merch? No. Oh yeah. No. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So things are happening, but you can support this show, hopefully for another 20 years by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, last chance to get the void out, at least on your t-shirt. And that's at shop.majorityreportradio.com. Check out the AM Quickie. The AM Quickie has been killing it lately. Absolutely killing it. You want to get a sense of what stories are going on in the news from a perspective that is, left of center and a little bit corrective of the mainstream media, and was slightly jaundiced, but not too jaundiced. amquickie.com. Sign up. It's free 3 times a week. And if you want it 5 times a week, we got a membership there. But really a great way to start the morning off in your email box every morning at 9 a.m. Check it out. Corey and Jacob do amazing jobs. We are very, very lucky to have both of them working on this. And don't forget the Discord, majoritydiscord.com. Check that out. Bradley, ESVN, what are you guys doing tomorrow? Is she back?
Yeah, Emma will be back tomorrow, so I'm just going to check in with her because I think we will be recording just to, wrap up some of the big free agency news in the NFL and check in with Emma after her well-deserved vacation. So we'll either be with you tomorrow or Monday. We're going to figure that out. So youtube.com/ESVN show to check out our prior streams and some clips if you'd like, and we'll be with you either tomorrow or Monday.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning last night had Robbie Martin of Media Roots Radio on to talk about neoconservatives and the history of a project for New American Century. It was both spooky and enlightening, and also made me feel an emotion I wasn't expecting to feel, which is kind of missing Barack Obama a little bit, which is strange. And some of especially just compared to the way Biden is running foreign policy now. It's
foreign policy was, I think the best thing he did was the Iran deal, but also everything around that region. There was a real sense that he was like, we've got a fundamental perspective problem.
and thumbing his nose at a lot of these sort of like the Kagan and neoconservative type of things. And it was, we had it was a nuanced conversation of the likes that you don't hear often in mainstream media. And
Absolutely disgusting.
long form conversations, people, everyone's love. I'm trying to be Lex Friedman about this. Long form conversations can really free our minds. And so check that out. I had a long form conversation last night up patreon.com/Left Reckoning to hear me and Robbie talk about AI art, which while I have my critiques of AI as a sort of investor speculative bubble, I also think the technology has some interesting transformative and applications. So we talked about that a little bit.
I wonder what that means. I wonder what you've got cooking.
Maybe some spooky. So he did this. It's like a movie where it's like he's used AI to make storyboards.
Right.
The entire way around, and it does create an interesting mood. I mean, it's spooky stuff is the best use for it because it's all unsettling anyway, even if you're not trying to make it unsettling with AI generated artwork, for instance.
Right.
But when you want to make something unsettling, it really works for that.
Oh, because it looks so sort of like real, but
It's
also
real but
artificial.
fake. Yeah, exactly.
Folks, 646-257-3920. We will take numbers relatively early in the fun half, and we will see you there in a second.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Should eat those focus gummies at the beginning of the song, not at the end of the song. Right?
Probably, yeah.
Sorry. Welcome back, folks. It is the fun half of the program. Emma is on vacation, and Matt and Bradley are here. Let's read a couple of the IMs, shall we? Jay Tingle, commuter rail is not merely a public good. The primary function of this service is to allow workers to go to their jobs. Commuter rail, therefore, benefits capital. To allow a corporation to impose an additional burden constitutes a tax, moving closer and closer to a company store economic model. Good point. Train Boy says, please chew more often on Mike, Sam. It makes me happy. Disco Asylum, are you eating some fun gummies? No, just the focus ones.
You could start doing mukbangs.
Altu Continua, I wonder how different Anna Kasparian's path would be now if Michael were still alive. There's a lot of, I think, situations you could say in that regard, but that is a good question. Glass-Steagall, I watched Matt and David's very good segment about Sam Harris's Gaza podcast for all his distancing from the IDW. That was some of the most bigoted shit I've ever heard. You know, that's the thing, is that we have now been doing this long enough that it was Sam Harris's bigoted stuff that was his original greatest hits. And then the IDW was sort of like a secondary element to his career. But he made his bones with Islamophobia. That was what put him on the map. I mean, that and, well, I think as an outgrowth, his sort of like his torture apology.
Right. And he was also part of that, like the atheist movement sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But his atheism was uniquely often focused on the problems with Islam as opposed to Judaism. I mean, if you go back, which I happen to have done, I think contemporaneously, and look like where he was touring and making his money, his like the place he was touring at the beginning, it wasn't mindfulness and stuff like this. He was going to brotherhoods. I don't really know how to categorize this, but I know that like in my temple growing up, there was a sisterhood and a brotherhood, and they were like social. They would do like social stuff. Like one day it's a bake sale, one day it's like we're having a movie night, or it's bingo night or casino night or something like that. And he would tour all these brotherhoods across the country, which was sort of amazing for a guy who was anti-religion. And it turned out, he had a sales pitch that, not all religions are created equal in his mind.
Unfortunately, he's kind of like one of the primary examples of how the new atheist movement was lousy with that sort of thing.
Yeah. Aaron is not cool. Sam, I appreciate the booking of authors, leaders, and professionals. That's fine, I guess. But when are you going to have to talk about Seth Rogen's thought on children, like Tim Pool does? I didn't realize Seth Rogen had thoughts on children. Not
Seth Rogen. I believe what I saw when I was watching Tim Pool is that Seth Rogen likes not having kids because he can smoke weed and wake up late. And Tim Pool.
I've got some news for you. Good reason.
You think that rings true?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, it's not just about sleeping late would be huge. You just don't have the same responsibilities is the bottom line. I mean, of course, he's an actor. And back when I was an actor, that's fairly consistent with what my life involved. Not Austin from PA. Just bought $200 in seeds from Cedar Seeds. The MR membership practically pays for itself, folks. It's true, actually. You're buying that amount. You've paid for like a year, half a year almost. Voight early and Voight often. Am I the only one who remembers years ago when China banned Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube and only allowed homegrown apps and online services? How every U.S. politician and media outlet called China authoritarian, and how this internet censorship would raise a whole generation of people that would hear about ideas that their government doesn't want them to hear about? Were they just mad because China got to do it first? Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't look to.
Yeah, I think
politicians be.
I think like Yasha Levine, who wrote the book Surveillance Valley, we've had on the show before. I think it's exactly right when he says like the internet was always a weapon. That's why America, and I think it's a good one. I'm glad the internet exists, but like I don't support China blocking social media, just like I don't support America blocking social media. But we also need to not be naive about these things, that they are used for that purpose. And the point is we should regulate them all, so we're not able to be manipulated on these sort of lines.
Far Twain, we had a bit of a historic day in the Alaska legislature yesterday. We had a joint session to address 12 executive orders the governor put out to make the state more efficient, in quotes. All but 4 were disapproved, which is great. The 4 that passed will be fairly inconsequential. Some of the board's councils that are staying the Chilkat Bald Eagle Advisory Council, Alaska Marine Highway Operations Board, and the Wood Tikchik State Park. Unilateral ceasefire. Sam, did you say you're working on the show for another 20 years? I did not say that. I did not say that. But that doesn't mean that the show will not be around for another 20 years. I'm not saying that my not working is imminent, but I am not going to be working deep into my 70s.
No, if we're going to do the Ben Shapiro method on Sam, he's going to be working until he has some sort of medical
You're
excuse.
going to have to wheel me out of here. Bill V. AM
Sit
Quickie.
in the chair and react to this Dave Rubin clip, Granddad.
Actually, I won't even have to do that, because by that point, I'll just be like, all I need is have my life force here. I'll send in my orb. Bill V. AM Quickie is a must-read every morning for me. Good coverage of international events as well. I'm Canadian and really enjoy it. We build it to appeal to a Canadian sensibility. And that's not true. That's not true. The voicemail is off. 646-257-3920. We'll get to your phone calls in a moment. 646-257-3920 is the number. So just to recap, Merrick Garland appointed a U.S. attorney who was appointed by Donald Trump. Incidentally, there are other U.S. attorneys who were not appointed by Joe Biden and also not appointed by Donald Trump that can be a special prosecutor. Well, Robert Hur was chosen, and then Merrick Garland let him put out a garbage of a report, which my understanding is Garland had the same opportunity that Bill Barr did with the Mueller investigation, which is to completely twist the report around in a horrible way. He could have very easily, it seems to me, made sure that the report was actually consistent with the investigation. And again, I don't need to be told that Joe Biden is old. I get that. And I think you can just look at, videos of him giving a speech, today versus, 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. But that doesn't mean that the special prosecutor has a license to essentially lie for a news cycle. Here he is being questioned, and the Republicans, it's funny because the Republicans brought him in with the hopes that they could elongate this story as opposed to kill this story. And I think to a certain extent, the State of the Union address also really hurt them. I think they scheduled this in such a way that they thought coming off the State of the Union, he was going to fall asleep in the middle of the State of the Union, and therefore will be able to come in with a 1-2 punch. Hur quit his job at the DOJ 2 days ago so that he was allowed to testify completely unbound by any of the Department of Justice rules, regulations, or ethics. And here he is being questioned by Representative Madeline Dean, a Democrat from Pennsylvania.
You have a copy of your report today, don't you, in front of you?
I do.
Could you read a portion of it for me? Your words, it is page 11, starting on line 3, beginning with the words, "Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden." Would you read the next few sentences?
Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts.
Keep going.
Congresswoman, I'm happy to have you read the words in my report.
Well, it's your report, so I think it actually is more fitting that you read those.
Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite.
Keep going.
According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it.
You may stop there. Thank you. You mentioned the indictment against Mr. Trump for mishandling sensitive classified national security information. That indictment says at the end of his presidency, Mr. Trump, I'm looking for my indictment here. I have it here. Hang on. Mr. Trump himself ordered that boxes containing classified materials go to Mar-a-Lago, where he hosted tens of thousands of guests. Then he kept these sensitive materials carelessly about the property, as you can see here. Classified documents ended up in a bathroom, a ballroom, on a floor, spewing about. And when a grand jury subpoenaed the documents, what did Donald Trump do? The indictment again shows against him what he responded by, suggesting that his attorney falsely represent that the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the subpoena. He directed his employee, Waltine Nauta, to move boxes of the documents to conceal them from Mr. Trump's attorney.
Now, her really didn't want to read that portion of his report because it essentially makes everything quite clear as to what's been going on. And what's interesting too, that happened yesterday, I guess it was, there's a guy named Brian Butler who was mentioned in that initial indictment, the one that she's reading from, as Trump employee number 5 in that indictment. And he is the one who helped that Walt Nauta load about 10 to 15 boxes into Trump's plane at the West Palm Beach airport in 2022. Yeah, we're going to watch him talk about it. But apparently the reason why he came out with this, why Butler is coming out with this information is because a couple of weeks ago, Judge Cannon, who is overseeing this, Trump appointed lawyer, well, might as well be judge, is going to release the names of the witnesses. And so he figured, well, if I'm going to be exposed anyways, I might as well come out and tell my story. And this, incidentally, this guy, Brian Butler, was a 20-year employee of Donald Trump. Not somebody who was like out to get Donald Trump, unless maybe he'd been working for him for 20 years and realized like, hey, what a crap. Anyways, here is Brian Butler.
To listen to is a moment that we spoke about where Brian Butler told us about how he was on this day in June 2022, not knowing what exactly he was doing, but he was asked to help load boxes, banker boxes, onto Trump's plane at his airport in Palm Beach, Florida, as the former president was set to go to New Jersey. Now, what he did not realize at the time that was happening then was Trump's team, his legal team, was meeting with members of the FBI at Mar-a-Lago after they had just performed a search of that storage room looking for classified documents, which we now know, based on the indictment, of course, that Evan Corcoran, Trump's attorney who was looking through those documents, Walt Nauta and others had moved many boxes out of that room. Now, Brian Butler, who is known and
pause it for 1 second. Like what they're describing, do you know the Benny Hill show? Yeah, exactly. Like they're walking into a room and it's literally like they're running out the other room, with the boxes and putting it on an airplane. Like, you hear this story, you think like, oh, well, maybe, okay, they moved it around, they didn't know where it was, and they're claiming that they gave it, and they're literally like, this is like a getaway situation. Go ahead.
Many boxes out of that room. Now, Brian Butler, who is known and referenced 6 times as Trump employee number 5 in the superseding indictment, was asked to help Walt Nauta, who is Trump's body man turned co-defendant, load those documents onto the plane. Here's what he told us about that moment.
And then what happened is Walt left before me, and he never goes directly to the plane. He's either in the motorcade when he goes there with the boss, the former president. And I remember telling him he left the club with, I didn't know what he had in his vehicle, but he waited for me at a nearby business, and I told him I would tell him when I was leaving Mar-a-Lago. So I left Mar-a-Lago, I texted him, hey, I'm on my way. He followed me, he pulled out and got behind me, we got to the airport. I ended up loading all the luggage I had, and he had a bunch of boxes.
You noticed that he had boxes?
Oh yeah, they were the boxes that were in the indictment, the white banker's boxes. That's what I remember loading.
And did you have any idea at the time that there was potentially U.S. national security secrets in those boxes?
No clue. No, I had no clue. I mean, we were just taking them out of the Escalade, piling them up. I remember they were all stacked on top of each other, and then we're lifting them up to the pilots.
How many boxes was it?
You know, they asked me in the interview, and I believe it was 10 to 15 is what I remember. I know
They
it was
being the investigators.
correct.
And when you look back on that now, what do you...
Well, I had no clue until probably the end of June. There's a few different things that happened that kind of opened my eyes to, something's going on here.
So you get that unusual request. Did you ever think to yourself, why were there so many boxes at Mar-a-Lago?
For me, I'm just thinking, the former president, he has a lot of stuff he likes to lug around with him. I never would have thought it was anything like what we see now.
Classified documents.
Yeah, what are the chances? Rough day for the Republicans, Biden crime family narrative.
Yeah.
If only they actually cared about the lives of Palestinians, they'd have something to argue about.
Yeah, leaning in on that sort of thing when Trump, there's pictures of his crapper with documents boxes.
Yeah, it's amazing. They keep it's like, talk about stepping on the rake. And so they got a little bit upset. That their whole, for months, I feel like they have been like, this is going to be great. This is going to be our prime time. We've got the Biden crime family on this $5 million bribe. And then it turns out that their key witness is actually arrested for lying so extensively and so energetically. And then they think, oh, we've got this guy saying that, Biden's old. He can't. We don't have to bring up the fact that he basically said that what Biden did wasn't really prosecutable, and very different from what Trump did. We can ignore that part because we're going to spend the whole hearing about how old Biden is. And then it turns out the transcript, it doesn't look like he forgot when his son died. And you had number of occasions where got dates wrong and had to be corrected. And so they're pissed. Here's Representative Tom Tiffany, Republican from Wisconsin. And look, I'll tell you something. This is the way that it works. We saw this with Benghazi. They went over and over and over again. There was never anybody who had their star witness for Benghazi on the Republican side and said, how dare you? Because it was going like they wanted it to go. They had 43, hearings on Benghazi or whatever it was. It was ultimately how they created the scandal about Hillary Clinton's emails being washed in acid or whatever it was.
Bleach bit.
And now they're pissed because their whole thing has fallen apart and they've got to look like, okay, how can we make this look like actually, what's our plan B? Oh, I know. This guy's from the Department of Justice, or was. Let's have at it. Here is Republican Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin.
Strong motivations to ignore the proper procedures for safeguarding classified information. And he provided raw material to his ghostwriter that would be of interest to prospective readers and buyers of his book. And I think he said something about, he viewed himself as a historic figure. correct?
I believe those words do all appear in the report.
Yeah, and he was also doing this for business purposes, that there may be people that would want to buy his book?
Towards the end of his vice presidency, Mr. Biden had resolved to write a book and began work on it towards the end of his vice presidency.
You know, I think, Mr. Chairman, this is really consistent with the Biden family when you look at them in trying to enrich.
The guys like they're going to now criminalize the idea that he wanted to write a book. This 70 some odd man who had been in the Senate for 50 years. And I got to be honest, well, I don't know if I would read it. I mean, I didn't. But the idea that he wanted to write a book, are you kidding me? But here it is. It's consistent with the Biden crime family. They're
writing books.
They're writing books. Good.
To write a book and began work on it towards the end of his vice presidency.
You know, I think, Mr. Chairman, this is really consistent with the Biden family when you look at them in trying to enrich themselves. I mean, you're familiar with the work that the Oversight Committee has done over the last year, right?
I have read some reports of it.
I mean, 20 phone calls that were made to his son that he denied in 2019, 20 shell companies that were created, over $20 million. I mean, doesn't it appear there's a pattern here that where I come from, they almost call it money grubbing?
Congressman, what I'm here to testify about today is the work that I conducted in this investigation and in this report.
So I want to thank you for the work that you did as far as you could, but unfortunately, you are part of the Praetorian Guard that guards the swamp out here in Washington, D.C., protecting the elites.
That's a real thing.
And Joe Biden is part of that company of the elites. And you see it in the things that the Department of Justice has not acted on, Mr. Chairman. I mean, you look at the president's son, who does not have to answer for lying on his Form 4473 in regards to throwing away a weapon. You see it where the Department of Justice fends off the IRS when the whistleblowers come with this information. And now we see it once again, where a president believes he is above the law. And there is no doubt that this president does believe he's above the law. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
You are a member of the Praetorian Guard.
Again, I just think like maybe leaning in on the president shouldn't be above the law, as you're saying, like Trump should be not liable for anything he did as executive. Like it's like the Swift boat thing. They think that cannot backfire.
It's fascinating, like how at cross currents they are from themselves. And I have to say that there is a quality. This guy's from Wisconsin. I don't want to lump everybody together from Wisconsin, but it's as if like they squeeze all the stupidity out of Ron Johnson, and it just drips all over the rest of the congressman from Wisconsin. You're not saying what I want you to say, so you're clearly part of the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, come on, guys. Can't be sitting in.
Donald Trump appointed him.
The what? I didn't know about this Praetorian Guard.
Wait, nobody told me.
I thought the Praetorian Guard, I thought that was due to South Africa.
What is going on? Did I hire the Praetorian Guard?
Dang it.
Somebody should have told me about the Praetorian Guard. That's why we're going to fire everybody at the RNC. No Praetorian Guards there.
The least Praetorian Guard administration.
I also like the sort of mixed metaphors. The Praetorian Guard were the experts at maintaining swamplands. Yeah. Horticulturists.
You want a swamp drained, you call the Roman Praetorian Guard. They know all about it.
They were expert at carrying buckets of water and saturating the soil in such a way.
Experts in drainage.
The opposite. They're protecting the swamp. God, you don't get it.
Swamp
You don't
maintainers.
get it. Swamp maintainers.
It's like they're the EPA
horticulturists. Unbelievable. It's just nuts. Call from a 210 area code, 646-257-3920. You're calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Hi, this is Meffy from Texas.
Meffy from Texas?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Meffy. What's on your mind?
Hi. Well, I wasn't sure I was going to get through. I'm 80% sure you picked up because you were expecting John from San Antonio.
That is actually not true, but I do probably have a reflex when I pick up a 210 and think that, yeah. But
well, I just I wanted to share an experience or two. So I've been to a number of protests in recent years.
Okay.
And there's a lot of talk about how scary and how, well organized and terrifying. I guess that's just scary again. These right wingers and militias and, the neo-Nazi groups. And having been to protests and counter protests where these people are in person, just seeing them in person is the greatest cure to fearing these people because they are so pathetic and weird in real life. It is insane.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably true with a certain set of them. There are some that can be a little bit more thuggish than that, and I would also,
sorry.
I would also say it's not so much like the fear of these people as individuals. The fear is that if their ilk, not even their ilk, or the people that they perceive themselves of that ilk, get the levers of power, these people turn into drones, essentially. I mean, that's, I've talked about the Bob Altemeyer's research about North America has about 25% of right-wing authoritarians. And, if you were to look at any authoritarian movement, you're not going to be impressed by the people who are even the middle management of this stuff.
Oh, no. I mean, just behold the master race, look at look at all these, these Nazis and folks. That's a good point. And I do think that it is just comforting, to see these folks and see just how they are in real life. Sometimes I saw one guy at a protest screaming into a megaphone, "I'm a critical thinker," over and over and over again. I saw a fascist militia that was protesting a drag show. They showed up with all their LARPing military gear and their guns, and they were standing outside and trying to intimidate people. It was a 2-hour show. They were sitting on the ground after 45 minutes.
Because they were a little bit tired.
No physical training. I saw Owen Schroyer. I didn't realize it was him at the time, but it was Owen Schroyer from InfoWars.
Yeah.
He went into he broke from his crowd, sprinted into our crowd, right? Bumped into a person and started screaming that he was assaulted. And one cop just sort of meandered over to him as he was skipping with glee and was like, okay, back to your side over there, little buddy. It's okay.
That's pretty funny.
And that day there was a headline up on InfoWars that, he was assaulted at this pro-trans rally.
Well, if you get an opportunity to witness that again, take some video and send it to us. Appreciate the call.
God, I wish I'd gotten the one more thing real quick, if I can.
Yeah.
The city of Austin, Texas is extremely blue. They have a lot of social programs. It's incredibly gay. So when people like Alex Jones and Joe Rogan move there to try and get Texas yeehaw country red state cred, they are living that blue life. 100%.
Well, send us some video if you come across any of these people again. I appreciate the call.
Absolutely.
Colin from let's see, what do we got here? 929 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
All right, one second.
Hello? Did you just move further away from the phone?
Hello?
Hello?
You're not coming on the red.
All right, is that better now?
Slightly. Just speak loudly. What's on your mind? Who's this? Where are you calling from?
All right, it's Sly, and I'm calling from Staten Island.
Okay, Sly from Staten Island. What's on your mind?
I just want to mention two things. So right now in the Seaview Hospital, there's like a nurses rally going on outside,
Okay.
and they were, I was just passing by. I didn't get the full details, but from what their church is saying was they're looking for more nurses to help out. So I'm assuming that they're about to start striking, or they're threatening a strike over there
Okay.
at Seaview Hospital. Yeah, in Staten Island. And the other thing, I have some curiosities about this whole crime spike that's going on, and see if you have any information you could pass on.
You're talking about the like the whatever it is, the 13% spike in subway crime, or is it 18%, 18% they're saying in this year?
Yeah, just in general, just the primary spike across the nation.
Well, I don't know that there is a crime spike across the nation, but go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I was just looking it up on the Google, and they said like about maybe like 41% of all crimes go unreported, and that's all for violent crime. I was wondering, what would you say to someone that's been bringing that up?
Well, I mean, if 41%, I mean, I don't know what you're talking about specifically on Google, but if 41% of all crime goes unreported, then it's always gone. That 41% is always there, present, right? So you're looking at the trends. If you were to assume that 41% of all violent crimes are not reported, and you add that to where we were, 20 years ago, I mean, the number of murders, let's say, in New York, for instance, I think in the 90s, was somewhere around like 2,300 a year, and we're down to like 300 and something. I know that there is a reported spike in crime in the subway, but we don't really know the details yet on I haven't seen per capita numbers, frankly.
I was trying to find information on that too, and like if there was like unreported, like if the unreported crimes were similar in like in the 90s and 80s, I couldn't.
There's no reason. Let's put it this way: there's no reason to believe that crime was more or less reported 30 years ago than it is today. There would be no reason to, to assume that there's a dramatic difference in the rate of reporting of crime. So we can, if somehow we know that 41% of crimes are not reported today, you could assume that was also the case 5 years ago, and 10 years ago, and in 2019, and in 2020, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, the recent spike in crime was because of lower ridership, which is a problem. More people on the subway means less crime on the subway, ironically, because there's more bystanders, more people to look at it. That's something people have commented on already. That's numbers out there.
Appreciate the call. Keep being Voight. Hi, MR Crew. Sam, wondering if you could tell us more about your experience with RFK Jr. What ideas of his do you like, dislike? Has he always been this strange? Also, Air America archives where? Let me start with the last thing. They got erased. The archives got erased. The morons sold their servers and wiped them. And I thought I had them from somebody who had worked at the company, and they gave them to me, and they turned out not to have them on there. So there are no Air America archives. We have some Majority Report show archives that maybe we should figure out a way of making available for members as a bonus.
I wonder if there's anybody out there that has them. Like every once in a while you get these pack rats that will.
Yeah, it's possible. Has RFK Jr. changed? I feel like some of his ideas have become far more libertarian than I remember them. I mean, the vast majority of conversations I had with him on air, I never really had too many conversations with him off air. The vast majority of conversations I had with him on air were about the commons and about private property being problematic. We did have a conversation, I think we may have had one on air about vaccines. And it was I don't know where. I feel like that was at the Tort Conference, maybe. I can't remember. But we had a disagreement about it, but he wasn't as he hadn't sort of professionalized his anti-vax stuff at that point. He had written stuff as early as 2005, but that had to get reversed. And again, in 2003, 2004, there was still, people had a question. It was sparked by what ultimately became a Lancet. Thimerosal was there. It was a theory that wasn't a bonkers theory that a version of mercury could have some neurological implications, but then the thimerosal was taken out. And I think even on that that show that aired, I don't know when it was. I had said but they took the mercury out. And I think he at the time did not believe that they had taken the mercury out. And I'm like, well, but this is checkable. This is verifiable. You can go into your pediatrician's office and say hey, do you give me one of those flu things. I'm going to go test it. And certainly my pediatrician was very sort of sensitive to those things, a little bit. He was a what do you call it? Traditional doctor, but was influenced by, less traditional medicine. Henry, doing some spring cleaning while listening today. I'm looking forward to planting my cedar seeds this year. I'll be using Tank Engine, Maestro, Gold Standard, and of course, TG2. That's the train wreck. Left is best. Yes, that train wreck. There's a reason why we call that. Matt Leck, humor aside, Stan 874. What? My 15 minutes of fame answering a quiz on Air America is lost forever? Hogtown, the Praetorian Gardener. As of 2024, says John Deere, crime on Chicago Transit is down 3% year over year. Violent crime down 25%. Robberies down 28%. Carjackings are down 52%. There is no crime wave, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Let's go to the phones. Calling from 587 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, it's Angela from Alberta. I'll try to be quick because
Who is it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, who is it?
It's Angela from Alberta.
Angela from Alberta. What's on your mind?
Sorry for all the multiple Canadian calls. I'm just going to try to be quick.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the caller, was it last week or the week before? There are so many independent Canadian sources for progressive news. Harbinger Media, for example, is great. The reason I think, and of course, Sandy from Left of the Box, if you haven't subscribed to her, please do so. And the reason I think a lot of Canadians listen to your show, and I actually did listen to your show back when Air America started because of Janine. So sorry, but
no, I would say that explains why 98% of people did.
Yeah. And the reason we're concerned is because we're seeing so much influence from American politics. So, of course, I don't know whether you heard, Tucker was in my province, Tucker Carlson with Jordan Peterson, who was actually from my province, and Conrad Black, along with promoting our newish premier, Daniel Smith, who's very influenced by a group called Take Back Alberta, who is it's very Bannon-esque, as I call them, influenced highly by MAGA. Daniel Smith, our premier, talks about how much he loves DeSantis, or however you say his name. And so I just wanted to point that out. And lastly, I did send messages in about university censorship on pro-Palestinian works, and I was hoping to be able to send you guys a clip on what was going on here, but they didn't make it public, which is probably a good thing. But basically, we had an open house at the University of Alberta that talked about the issues of Palestine and censorship, and we found out that the local Jewish community was meeting with the university administration on a weekly basis as of November at some point. So this is probably the case with a lot of universities in North America right now, and it's concerning. And the censorship is not new. We've seen this go on for a long time, especially a few years ago before. So I don't know what's happening now, but we had just our university elections, and fortunately, the Palestinian student group is now looking to get recognition that they didn't before.
Great.
And lastly, just on that point, I think what you've been talking about with Palestine has been really great, and for progressive people on both sides of the border, keep coming out to events that talk about protests. We have weekly marches in Edmonton for calling for ceasefire in Palestine. We have had a few. We've had a few LGBTQ protests because the same premier just introduced a anti-trans bill under the guise of parental rights, banning any gender-affirming care below the age of 16, and between 16 and 18 only with parental consent. So we're seeing this influence, and it's a real problem.
It's a real problem. Well,
we're gonna
appreciate the call.
Thanks. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks.
Take care, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
A lot of people tuned into that show because of Janine. I would say all. I was not a big draw.
Oh, I don't know if you'd say you're not a big draw. I just think Janine was a very big draw.
When that show launched, I was not a draw.
Not the,
I mean, almost like definitionally.
The guy from Sex and the City?
No. Nope. The best thing I did was at the, well, maybe we'll wait. Maybe that'll come up.
Stay tuned.
Maybe that'll come up. But it was never, no, I was not a draw. Here's Candace Owens, sort of just, I don't know, shooting from the hip about whether Macron's wife is actually a trans woman. Is that what's going on here?
So I think a bit of programming note. What's going on here is Candace Owens did a whole bunch of Palestine stuff before going on maternity break, including have Norm Finkelstein on, and got in a public spat with Ben Shapiro. And she came back from that and has barely touched the subject since.
Interesting.
And so she needs to show out with other sort of like attention-grabbing stuff to show that she's not put on a leash like she is.
And the sad part is that, you know, like they had run through all the anti-trans stuff, and it's like going into the storeroom and just being like, wait, who emptied out all there's no more pencils here.
Yeah. Like celebrity gossip is what.
And so she's using she's like, well, I've got to write with something, and it's like she's got like one of those dry erase markers, and it's just not quite working out. But here she is, just I don't know, shooting from the hip. About Macron's wife.
No, some major update now happening. Major update. So let me tell you about how I happened upon the story.
Pause it for 1 second. Did they basically refuse to give her a microphone that works? That's what I mean, we're starting to like.
This is the audio quality from the clip. I was listening to it on my computer.
She's got like the skeleton crew now for her show. Go ahead.
No, some major update now happening. Major update. So let me tell you about how I happened upon the story. There was just an article that was published in the Daily Mail. Here is the headline. The proof France's first lady wasn't born a man. What? I was going, what? So I, of course, instantly read it, because what a bizarre thing that you're even needing to present proof that Brigitte
Pause it for a
Macron
second. She's not capable of reading the rest of that headline. The true story of Brigitte Macron's controversial background is revealed as wicked slur is spread by the French far right to damage the election hopes of her husband. So in other words, the Candace Owens of France, essentially, is going on saying, I mean, I know this is really hard to even imagine that people would be looking at like a first lady or a former first lady, and you are right wingers, and you're starting to sort of like pretend.
Is that a man?
Is that a man? Like, I know that's so hard.
Far-fetched.
To even like, it could blow your mind because France is so strange and foreign of a place. Like, I mean, could you imagine anybody ever saying like, Michelle Obama is actually Michael Obama? Oh, wait a second. All right, continue.
Not born a man. And embedded within the article, they showed two photos, and I'm going to show you right now. This is the first photo. This is allegedly Brigitte Macron when she was a little girl sitting on her mom's lap. But when I saw this photo, the first thing I noticed was that the person on the far left, the boy, that actually looks like Brigitte Macron. I'm taking you guys through my thought process. I saw this photo, I was like, that actually looks like she might actually be the guy. Maybe she's a dead ringer for her brother, but I don't see any resemblance there with the little girl. They showed the second photo, debunking another young photo, allegedly, of Brigitte Macron. What I thought when I looked at this photo, that this looks way too new to be a photo of a 70-year-old when they were a child. Now, again, these are my thought processes. When I then read the article, there was no debunking whatsoever. They just were calling people that were saying otherwise far right, all the typical buzzwords, far right, conspiracy theorists, racist, sexist, it's homophobic, it's anti-Semitism. Just the thing that we are all now able to immediately look through. These names don't mean anything anymore. And that just makes me want to look further into the alleged theory. And I did, and holy smokes. So the quote unquote conspiracy theory is actually a 3-year thorough investigation that was conducted by journalists that were working with genealogists. It was published in 6 issues in Faits et Documents. I'm sorry, my French is not that good, but they published 6 issues unpacking what they had discovered after a 3-year investigation. And here is what they are saying, right? So again, I'm going to say allegedly, but this is what they have published.
Okay. Pause it for a second. It just occurs to me as we're now in like minute 18 of this, her deep dive into not just whether Brigitte Macron is actually a trans woman, but how Candace Owens came to believe the thing. And I love how it's all premised on the fact, like, why would you have to debunk such a thing if it was fake? And then it occurs to me, like, who the F watching the Daily Wire gives a shit about Macron's what? But
well, that's the thing Will Menaker said is like, putting aside that this is far-fetched, even if it's true, she called it the biggest scandal in history, which is ridiculous. But I would also say it contradicts something Candace Owens has been on record about, which is that trans people are a recent invention. Assume this is true, which I don't believe at all. But that would mean Macron's wife has been living trans for a half a century. And which kind of puts to lie that this is a recent mind virus.
Or maybe she's the first
okay, right.
trans
this is the
woman
long game.
ever. All right, let's hear more about Candace's, like, her thought process. This is just looking into my completely decrepit mind.
To the alleged theory. And I did. And holy smoke.
Whoa.
So the quote unquote conspiracy theory.
That's a real thing.
It's actually a 3-year thorough investigation that was conducted by journalists that were working with genealogists. It was published in 6 issues in Faits et Documents. I'm sorry, my French is not that good, but they published 6 issues unpacking what they had discovered after a 3-year investigation. And here is what they are saying, right? So again, I'm going to say allegedly, but this is what they have published. Their theory is that the First Lady, Brigitte Macron, was actually born Jean Michel. So Brigitte is actually John Michael. John Michael lived as a man for 30 years, fathered 5 children, okay? and then transitioned at the age of 30 to become Brigitte. Okay, now I'm just gonna show you this before and after photo, just right here. They actually used, as a part of their investigation, Chinese software. And this is a side-by-side. It is such a dead ringer. It's crazy to me that you would not say that these
pause it for a second.
This is
she has a similar nose as her brother or supposed brother. And also sort of a similar cow's lick and also similar facial dimple. That is fascinating.
This sort of thing is characteristic of schizophrenic posting on social media that I see, where it often this sort of trans stuff, or like I'm being followed. This is the same person. It's like it's not the same person.
Oh no! This was also like there was huge stuff around like the princess's photo that just came out, where people are like, "Oh my God, her face has been taken from a completely different photo," and they're like, "Well, actually." It could just be that, same face. Like they're all constantly looking for, but this genealogists have said, like, wait a second, the nose looks similar.
Oh, well,
look at
genealogists.
Look at the chin. They both have chins.
I mean, maybe she looks like her brother. I mean, that's pretty far-fetched.
So
I don't believe in
strange.
coincidences. Okay.
Ignore the fact that the eye color is different. Go ahead.
Individuals look alike. This is potentially the same individual age. So on the left, what I'm showing you is John Michael. On the right is a photo of the First Lady, okay? Now, I will tell you why this has legs and why I'm going to encourage you to read the very
pause it for 1 second. In the original photo, there is a girl in there, yes?
Yes, I think it's
okay, so what happened to her? Where did she go? Did they switch? It was like one of those like switching things.
Probably Mexican or sex traffickers.
When is Candace Owen moving to Patrick Bet David's show or whatever that guy's name?
It's a good question.
When's the contract up?
I mean, I'm increasingly value-tained by this.
Oh my God!
But also, what's interesting is that I don't know if you guys remember, but famously, Macron met his wife when she was a teacher at his school. And so that's why they have a big age difference.
Right.
So presumably she would have, if this is true, she would have, I guess, gone to school like as an undergraduate and teacher's college in France as a man, then transitioned and became a teacher in like the 80s. Like it just seems like there would be some document or some way to.
Let's just see a little bit more of the evidence. I need to hear a little bit more.
We're about to get to it.
You would not say that these two individuals look alike. This is potentially the same individual age. So on the left, what I'm showing you is John Michael. On the right is a photo of the First Lady, okay? Now, I will tell you why this has legs and why I'm going to encourage you to read the very long document that I read, which we will include in the link in bio.
Sorry, I just have to pause that. The very long document, 6 pages. They're working on, or six publishing. They're working on it for 3 years. It's like this is how like all the Joe Rogan types they fetishize long form conversation, despite it being the content being complete crap.
Right, exactly.
The first obvious reason that I am very much believing what they have published is because the First Lady is simply unable to produce any photos of herself throughout the first 30 years of her life. Guys, how easy to debunk this. If you say, Candace, no, actually, you lived as a man for 30 years. I lived for 30 years. I'm going to show you every photo of every year that I've lived. Here's me in college, right? Here's me while I was pregnant with my children. Here's me and my husband.
Pause it for 1 second. I mean, and I know nothing about this because I've never spent 15 seconds outside of this clip thinking about Brigitte Macron. But if someone IMs right now and says there's hundreds of photos of Brigitte Macron under the age of 30, I would not be surprised. Like they're all over the web. But go ahead.
Our wedding day, there would be so many photos that Brigitte should have at her disposal if this is false. But they won't produce any. Nope, they're just calling everybody wrong and backwards and transphobic. Just produce the photos. Instead, the only photos they have produced that are circulating in the media are the photos that I just showed you. And as I said, the first photo, she looks more like the John Michael who she claims is actually her brother, who she won't just present to the public.
Just pause real quick.
If that is-
Maybe she's worried that every photo that she produces, there'll be some sort of schizo boxes put over it and be like, this actually maybe looks like doctor or something.
I love how she's doing this like deep dive and keeps calling him John Michael. It's Jean-Michel. I mean, if you're gonna do an expose on Brigitte and Jean-Michel, you should at least say their names right so that we know that you're talking about the French first lady.
And this is how the burden of proof is shifted. Like Candace Owens hasn't got to the actual like proof. She just says,
there's an absence of contrary proof.
Exactly.
Backwards and transphobic, just produce the photos. Instead, the only photos they have produced that are circulating in the media are the photos that I just showed you. And as I said, the first photo, she looks more like the John Michael who she claims is actually her brother, who she won't just present to the public. If that is in fact your brother, please just go on a walk with him so we can capture it and say, no, she just happens to look like her brother. Here's John Michael. No, John Michael has disappeared. The genealogists just can't find a single trace of John Michael since Brigitte came into the public space at the age of 30. So John Michael existed for 30 years, according to the genealogist, okay?
The genealogist? What is this? What are the genealogists? This is like, they're going to have to go back multiple generations. Like, what does the genealogist need to do? What about just someone who did research?
Yeah.
This is so amazing. What's the proof? Well, these series of assertions.
It has to be said, like, Macron sucks. He is preferable to the far right in France. This is becoming like, we have a very degraded political discourse in the world right now.
Keep going.
John Michael. No, John Michael has disappeared. The genealogists just can't find a single trace of John Michael since Brigitte came into the public space at the age of 30. So John Michael existed for 30 years, according to the genealogist, okay? And then John Michael stops existing and Brigitte exists. But Brigitte doesn't exist for the first 30 years, okay? The second photo, the one that I said to you.
Where's the little girl? Where's the sister? How come nobody cares about her? Go ahead.
Since Brigitte came into the public space at the age of 30. So John Michael existed for 30 years, according to the genealogist, okay? And then John Michael stops existing and Brigitte exists. But Brigitte doesn't exist for the first 30 years, okay? The second photo, the one that I said to you.
I mean, I think you can stop right there. If Jean-Michel and if Brigitte did not exist for the first 30 years and Jean-Michel only existed for 30 years, case closed. What does that mean, though? How does she know they didn't exist? Go ahead.
Brigitte came into the public space at the age of 30. So John Michael existed for 30 years, according to the genealogist, okay? And then John Michael stops existing and Brigitte exists. But Brigitte doesn't exist for the first 30 years, okay? The second photo, the one that I said to you looked a little too recent for an alleged 70-year-old. Well, yeah, they were able to debunk that. That's actually a photo of her daughter, her daughter Trefane. You can see now side by side. Of course, that is her daughter. It's a dead ringer for her daughter. So why would you colorize a photo and make it black and white and try to pass it as yourself when it is in fact your daughter? Now, I'm sure somebody will say, well, didn't come directly from the First Lady.
IVF? Whose child is that? It's whose? It's wait. Is it Macron?
I'm gonna see if it's hers with Macron.
It's Brigitte's daughter or Jean-Michel's daughter? So Jean-Michel had a daughter. Like what? Who carried this child?
I don't think Macron's the father.
No, he's not. This woman is 40. Her daughter, and from a previous marriage.
How old is Brigitte Macron?
She's 70.
70. So
she had her.
Jean-Michel
30,
had
31. Johnny Shaw had the child at 31.
So who's the mom?
Right.
I mean, who carried
Trefane
who was
to
pregnant with her? Well, I'm sure Candace will cover this on the deep dive. Go ahead.
Her daughter Trefane. You can see now side by side. Of course, that is her daughter. It's a dead ringer for her daughter. So why would you colorize a photo and make it black and white? And
It's
try
also
to pass
so
it as
strange
herself?
that a daughter would look like a mother. That never happens. What are the chances of that? Go ahead.
So is Brigitte a birthing person?
That's the thing I can't figure out.
Right.
In fact, your daughter. Now, I'm sure somebody will say, well, didn't come directly from the first lady. It is very obvious that they are trying to dissuade the narrative by producing these two photos, which are easily debunked. Here's a second reason that I would say major red flags. Rather than just producing what should be ample evidence of your existence for the first 30 years of your life, they're suing. Yes, the First Lady actually sued two of the journalists that were involved.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. So, in other words, they're going to have to provide proof that this was a lie in a court of law. What a strange tack to take if you're actually telling the truth.
Yeah.
Why would you want to have this adjudicated if you're not hiding something?
Typically, you ignore it and you don't get the law involved.
Yeah, of course, you sue when you feel like you can win. And if you feel like you can win, I don't know the laws in France, but I suspect it's going to involve having to prove that what they're saying is not true.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be relevant.
That seems like it will be relevant regardless of what the structure of the law is. Let's just go. I want to see how she explains that away. How does a lawsuit actually, like every time you hear somebody, like how many times like Steven Crowder said, I'm going to sue for defamation or, Rubin or whoever it is, or I'm going to sue. And then they just sort of let it just sort of melts away because they realize they have no case.
Here's a second reason that I would say major red flags. Rather than just producing what should be ample evidence of your existence for the first 30 years of your life, they're suing. Yes, the First Lady actually sued two of the journalists that were involved in producing the story. Brigitte Macron, here's a headline from the Telegraph. Brigitte Macron sues women who claimed that she is
That seems like a real headline.
Something to note is what exactly Brigitte is suing for. She's suing them for violation of privacy and fundamental personal rights, plus illicit use of her image. But what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything.
No, doesn't mean anything. Candace is also, not only is she know some genealogists, she's also an expert on French law. There you go. Candace Owens herself threatened to sue Crowder for accusing her of blackmail, says Harry Truman. That is...
yeah, why would she do that?
Obviously, because she's hiding something.
Yep.
Why else would you do that? Any clips here that we needed to... Let's see. No, I think we got to all the ones I wanted to get to. Oh, we should talk about this Ken Buck, though. Is it worth doing this Johnson Posobiec thing? No. It's short. All right. Well, let's start with Ken Buck. They're down to 218 now, Republicans in the House. Democrats have 213. Ken Buck, who had already announced that he was going to retire, which is why he was saying things adverse to the Republican Party, has gotten so sick of it, he's just going to leave. Next Friday. Did not tell Speaker Johnson beforehand. In other words, like, this is a real ultimate FU that Ken Buck is giving. Now, don't get me wrong. Ken Buck is a Republican and therefore, has voted like a jackass 90% of the time, 98% of the time. But this is pretty fun.
Republican of Colorado. You just came from the hearing. Before we get to that, you announced some big news. You're leaving Congress at the end of next week.
I am, yes. I'm resigning my seat and creating a vacancy in my district.
Why?
Well, everywhere I go in Colorado, Dana, I hear that people are not happy with Trump and they're not happy with Biden. And I think we need to change our electoral laws here. And I have a passion for that. And I'm going to leave and I'm going to find the right organization to join. And I'm going to start working on that issue. We have to have better candidates up and down the ballot, not just president, but Senate, House, local offices. We've got to find better ways to elect candidates and bring America together.
You already had announced that you were going to not run for re-election. Why leave now and leave a vacancy in an already very narrow majority for your party?
Yeah, because to me, it's important to get in the mix of this election cycle and start talking about the issues that people recognize are such a problem right now.
You know, my colleague Melanie.
Pause it for
Zanona
1
is
second.
reporting-
I mean, is that him basically saying, like, I've got the offers? The offers are live right now for me to be a lobbyist.
Lobbyist, or I think even like join Dana Bash as a colleague, honestly.
Oh, maybe.
Go ahead. It's a problem right now.
You know, my colleague Melanie Zanona is reporting that there is such tension among House Republicans that many of them aren't even going to a retreat that's going to happen at the end of this week. Is that
Pause it for 1 second. There are, like I said, there's there's 218 Republicans. There's less than 100 going to the caucus retreat. They
the vibes
hate
of Bohemian
each other.
Grove are off lately.
Oh yeah.
part of why you're leaving so abruptly?
I think this place is dysfunctional. For example, I am the number 3rd ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. I haven't even asked my questions yet. 40, 50 people have gone before me.
But that could be personal. With
Well,
all
it
due
could be
respect.
personal, but a lot of this is personal, and that's the problem. Instead of having decorum, instead of operating in a professional manner, this place has just evolved into this bickering and nonsense, and not really doing the job for the American people.
How much of the fact that you are leaving March 22nd, next Friday, how much does that have to do with the fact that Trump is the presumptive nominee and you're not exactly a fan?
Well, I don't think whether he was the nominee or not, I think our system is broken in how we choose candidates, and I want to get involved in that process.
Is it really that miserable right now to be, I mean, from the outside in, it doesn't look that fun. From the inside.
You know, like, what is he talking about how they choose candidates? Like there's something systemically broken, or just your party is just a crap show?
Is under an authority.
Like, I mean, you know, it's not that radical an idea that an incumbent ends up being the president. And even if people don't like him, that happens a lot. People could have run against him, or more people could have run against Joe Biden. We've seen that in the past, but very often that incumbent ends up being the candidate. It's impressive. What's this here?
It reminds you of Evan Bayh leaving the Senate.
Oh, Evan Bayh was just, the worst. Exactly. I want to make this country a better place by then becoming a huge lobbyist.
This place just keeps going downhill, and I don't need to spend my time here. We've taken impeachment and we've made it a social media issue as opposed to a constitutional concept. Mike Johnson's ability to talk me into staying here is going to be about as successful as his ability into talking me into unconstitutional impeachments. This place.
There you go. I guess he doesn't feel that strongly about Mike Johnson's skills as a convincer. Here is Ron Johnson, the Senate's second stupidest man in the Senate, with bumbling conservative commentator Jack Posobiec, who you'll recall got caught on Bumble. By mistake, someone hacked into his account, created a fake account, started dating women while his wife was pregnant. I only bring that up just because.
The deep state will go to such lengths to try to break up a happy marriage.
Totally. But here is Ron Johnson basically talking about how Republicans are completely inept at governing. And part of that is because they have no agenda beyond destroying government and cutting taxes, but that's sort of, it goes hand in hand.
Currently here inside the bubble, you hear Republicans say, we need to get a result. We need to effectively govern. To me, that's almost code words for we got to do Democrat light. I subscribe more to the William F. Buckley definition of conservatism, which is standing athwart history and screaming, stop. We have to stop this madness. So there's a fair amount of stopping that's being required here. I think we'd be far better off if we never passed another piece of legislation.
Pause it for 1 second. We should just say, no Congress in the history of Congresses have passed less legislation than this one by a factor of 2, I think. Like they've passed half of what the next most do-nothing Congress has ever done. What legislation have they passed under Republican control of the House? I guess a budget or partial of budget so far.
From Axios about this is entitled Capitol Hill Stunner 2023 led to fewest laws in decades. So this is from mid-December. The vast majority were uncontroversial bills that passed either by unanimous consent or with minimal opposition, including multiple measures to rename Veterans Affairs clinics and another to mint a coin commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps.
That Scotty, stop.
And then other than that, was raising the debt ceiling and funding the government, but that's it.
Amazing. All right, final call of the day. Calling from a 425 area code. You are the final caller of the day.
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
All right. Hi. I was not expecting to get taken on.
Why did you call?
Oh, sorry. I'm flustered.
No, don't be flustered. That was probably rude of me. It's just everybody we take on, like, I didn't think I would be on. Well, you're here.
Yeah. So, I'm from Washington State.
Okay.
And you can call me A.
Okay. A from Washington State. What's on your mind?
So, I guess I have what you might call gossip.
Okay.
And I was a student at Evergreen State College during the event that caused Eric Weinstein to leave very dramatically.
Oh, well.
You mean Brett, right?
Brett Weinstein.
Oh, did I say Eric?
Yeah,
I meant Brett. And I do appreciate that you all are some of the few people still dunking on him because he is pretty contemptible.
He's also a lunatic, but so I feel bad about it, but I'll get over it.
Well, so there's a lot of context that goes on with what happened in that in 2017, and I want to provide a little, but I also don't want to waste your time because I know it seems like I'm the last of the day. So,
I think we want to hear the context.
Okay. Well, so the story I'm sure you've heard many times is that there was a no whites day, and then he said no, and then then everyone got angry at him, and he fled in fear or whatever. That's a very exaggerated story, as you might be able to imagine.
I'm sure.
Right. A thing I do want to say for context is that Evergreen is a very weird school. I don't know how much you know about its reputation, but it's a very unorthodox school. Just to give you an idea, there aren't grades. You get a qualitative analysis, and then you receive credit. And most students only take one class a quarter, and it's supposed to be like this interdisciplinary class. We don't have majors. It's a very weird school, and that has its problems, but also one of the results due to how it works is that faculty like Brett Weinstein, who were, not adjuncts, they were professors there, who had a long-standing record there, had pretty cushy jobs. They don't have a ton of expectations put on them. No one tells them what they have to teach. They can just create classes that they want to teach. I mean, he was living pretty comfortably. but also because of that weirdness, it's a very, very liberal school. Liberal is even, I mean, like, we have like communists and anarchists all the time there.
Okay.
So the quote unquote all whites day is not, no whites day is actually, so
it was the day of absence, right? It wasn't called the No Whites Day. It was called the Day of Absence.
Exactly. It was the day of absence, and an important thing is that had been going on for years. And
what did that entail? White people didn't show up? Is that it, or what?
No, initially I can cover this. Initially, it was students of color, maybe black students particularly, I'm not sure, but would be gone for that day, and it'd be like a cause for reflection. And then my understanding is the shift was it was going to be white students absent for the day and black students still in campus, and that was too much for Brett.
Exactly. Yeah, it was based on a play. I don't remember what it was by, but it was a play, and it was inspired by that, and that's been going on for, I think, decades.
Okay.
And after Trump was elected, I mean, that was literally the cause, is that like people were like, hey, I'm a student of color. I don't love being asked not to show up, so let's reverse it. And then the thing is, so he got really, really upset about it, and I think I don't remember the exact position the faculty had. I think it was like student affairs administration or whatever, but he was messaging and emailing, like essentially harassing the person who ran this, who was a coworker for months apparently.
And we should say, I want to remind people, this is a guy who basically, when he got blocked by Elon Musk on Twitter, basically said this was a new form of Orwellian censorship. And so this is somebody who has both an incredibly sensitive psyche and also delusions of grandeur.
So there's one removed from Peter Thiel. But anyway, continue, Carl.
Oh yeah. So, but the thing is, so when we talk about this story, I think it's very easy to think, well, people got angry at him because of that, and I totally bought into that narrative, even though I actually remember, I remember hearing someone else recount it and talk about the context, and I was like, holy shit, I totally rewrote the memory in my head, because the reason there was protests at all on the campus around the time that all happened had nothing to do with Brett Weinstein at the time. What happened was there was some altercation on campus, and two students had been detained. Two black students had been detained by campus police overnight, and the white student who was in the altercation was able to go back or whatever. A lot of students were upset about that and protested the campus police. And those protests were happening. Brett Weinstein came out of, he was protest.
Kyle, you're breaking up a little bit. Did you move a little bit?
I made my what was
hey. Yeah, I remember there being a cop-related thing. Kyle, you're not coming through anymore. One other thing, if maybe you can move to a place with better reception, I remember is this day of absence thing wasn't the first time he was squawking about this sort of issue. By his own, and he's talked about this in documentaries. The first time he realized things were going wrong was when the faculty union he was a part of agreed to diversity and inclusion stuff. The union agreed to it, and he said, "Well, this is we've let authoritarianism in." So he was already he had previous on this sort of concern that maybe of people of color were taking too much or something like that. Are you there, caller?
Am I coming through any clearer?
Yeah, now you are. Yeah.
Okay, I'm standing near a window. So what I was saying, and tell me if I missed something else, is that basically he came out during those protests about the campus police and was trying to debate the protesters.
Yeah, he's been this kind of stinker. And Vox and all the people who wrote that up got played, and there hasn't been a reflection about that. Everyone just said, "Well, isn't it weird that this guy who we were all sympathetic with when he did this stunt and then went right on Tucker Carlson's news program? Isn't it weird that he's turned out to be some kind of psycho? He was always that.
Always.
Even at Evergreen."
Look, appreciate the call.
Totally.
Appreciate the call.
I do want to share a last anecdote if I can.
Yes, please.
Is that I saw him on campus after all that happened, just walking around talking to someone. And the only I passed him, and the only thing I heard him say was, I don't know if you watch South Park, and to me that tells me a lot about the kind of individual he is.
Exactly.
Which is that his interesting anecdote is an episode of South Park he saw.
Charlatan.
Yeah. Appreciate the call. I mean, this notion.
Yeah, have a great day.
This has been eternal. This has been eternal in our media. And, they're constantly and largely it's because sort of there is a type of liberal, and this was true even before liberal became the type of bad word that it is today. This is back when liberal was you're a communist if you're a liberal, in the aughts
sort of era.
No, post that. I'm talking about the aughts. This notion of centrist, for lack of a better word, columnists. Those liberals who wanted to project that a certain amount of they were defensive about their not so left, but in their mind, leftish politics seeping through. So they would jump on stories like this as a way of establishing their bona fides. And you see that still.
Jonathan Chait?
Yeah, without a doubt. Although I think he's yes, he's these people are almost a little anachronistic at this time. Now you see it more in the context of well, I'm going to report this her thing and not even ever assume that this partisan is going to be leading us astray. I'm going to report this Bill Barr thing without any skepticism. Or the Times, Barry Weiss and IDW. That's the ilk it is now. There's a little bit less of what it was. But certainly, taking this guy's experience and word for it. We saw it with Glenn Beck when they tried to reform him and this and that. There's always this massive benefit of the doubt when it's clearly BS. Back I remember Franken when he wrote his book was a function of having attended the Paul Wellstone Memorial, and the way that it was reported was so credulous, and it was all just basically from Drudge. And then it got filtered into the mainstream. These stories are there's such an intense desire to believe them, and then there is an intense desire to refuse to believe that you've been hoodwinked, or that you made a mistake, or that you didn't do your job properly, you didn't properly vet it. So that's where that concept of well, this guy's gone in a completely different direction than I would have imagined.
Yeah. Him, J.D. Vance, all these guys say that type of liberal, originally welcomes.
All right, let's read some IMs here. Nick from PA, we have a major TikTok problem. Leaked audio of ADL Chief Executive Jonathan Greenblatt freaking out that because global youth aren't buying Israel's propaganda anymore. Is that true? Do we have that?
Look for it.
Wanna Duck, Day of Absence by Douglas Turner Ward is a terrific play with black actors in whiteface dealing with a sudden absence of the serving black population. Mobblehead Marxist. I'm very much a William Buckley conservative. I also invited a college-age Ross Dathout onto my yacht.
Ross Douthat, the youngest columnist ever hired by the New York Times because of how smart he is.
I mean, that says it all. M.R. Gouda, Cinema Buck 2024. That's a rumor I've heard. She's already shot that down, I thought. Saint Jimothy. Happy Hump Day, MR crew. Just wanted to shout out a friend of the show, Discord. Okay, I read that one already. Jackie C. Following you almost 20 years since Air America, 79 years old, way too much ageism. Friday with Francesca. Could use what Mehdi focused on, raw story compilation of 32 cognitive slips of Trump in one day. I just don't think it's ageism.
That's a proxy.
It's a proxy. We made this clear. Like Joe Biden. First off, I will say this: Joe Biden has always been a pompous ass. And the fact that he's older doesn't necessarily make him a pompous ass, but having aged some myself, I can tell you that my pomposity and my assitude has grown with like the sense of like, I've lived enough years. I have an assessment. I don't have a problem with someone age 81 being president, although we're getting close to it. There's certain realities. Terms of like, but I don't really, I don't vote on the president based upon the president.
Yeah, it's not my preference, but that they're old. I prefer them to be younger, but yeah.
But we're talking about also the reality of the body politic in the way that they're assessing this election. And I like to think that if I had what was perceived a liability and was going to be a real liability in terms of getting elected, that I would address that. But you look at like the defensiveness in which when he came out in that press conference, it's not just like he's making politically bad decisions at times. Got away with it, and, it was Super Bowl weekend and things went away. But Star Fox. Oop. Here we go. Sam and crew, happy hump day. I was wondering if you had covered anything about the Shot Spotter microphone location leaks that Wired published recently. May just absolutely shock you to hear that Worcester is one of those cities that abuses this program. I didn't know that about the abuse, but I knew that they had it. Basically, the data shows that the Worcester PD has set up a containment zone around lower income neighborhoods. And this is repeated around the country. Bill Shaner and Chris Robarge have a deep dive over at Worcester Sucks and I Love It. If willing and able, you should have them on to talk about policing and abolition. It would be a big guest as Bumbler. Wouldn't be as big a guest as Bumbler, but I think listeners would get something from the conversation regardless. Left is best. Yeah, we'll look into that. Kowalski. Instead of spending $5 billion on directly purchasing properties and housing people, why don't we use that $5 billion for a complicated tax cut scheme to landlords, and then we ask them nicely without forcing them to lower rents to fix the housing crisis. Landlords are known for being responsible and reasonable members of society. Also, paint thinner tastes funny. Jonathan Armstead. I did some research late last night on uncommitted here in Illinois. From what people are saying on Reddit and Twitter, the state doesn't count and report on write-ins unless it's an actual person. However, some groups are encouraging people to leave the presidential slot blank, but filling out down ballot options. The idea is that Dems will see the disparity. Here in Chicago, I'm going out to vote on Tuesday. My support and will support recent MR guest Keena Collins over my Congressman Danny Davis. Excellent. Dr. Ragan Driver. She's essentially saying there's a missing child, but ignore that. Maybe it's a switcheroo or something. Missing child is no longer important. Birtherism or brotherism, you decide. That's good, brotherism.
Well, she's staking her whole professional reputation on it, so she knows she's come to play.
Exactly. Morgan Moonscar, conceding ground to Trump that TikTok is bad, actually, is psychotic. Trump, I think, is now against banning it.
Yeah, Trump and also Elon. I'm in their side on this.
Al Conniption, Sam, the MR app audio stream is working like crap today. It keeps cutting out after a few minutes. Am I the only person with this issue right now? Maybe.
Yeah, let us know if you also have that, folks.
John from Texas. Is Sam code switching while talking to the Massachusetts guy? No, he's from Brooklyn. But when I talk about Massachusetts, period, when I start thinking about Worcester, it's the code switch happens.
Remotely proximate.
If it's even close, I will fall right into it.
Upstate, you're liable to do it.
It doesn't matter where it's like. If I have any notion of Worcester, if I'm like within like an hour or two of Worcester, if I'm near Worcester, if I've had a beer, it just comes. Number 13. It took me like weeks after my my high school reunion. Number 13, people are finally starting to recognize the Democratic Party are not leftist. Now people need to be correctly educated about leftism. Most people don't even realize they have a desire for leftist policies. I'm not sure I agree with like some of those premises. Like I don't know that most Democrats care about that. I don't think most Americans do. I mean, I think I know what you're saying in terms of that, but Glass Seagull. I watched Matt and David's okay, we did that. All right, 3 more. Your body is savage land. Regarding your caller from Texas about far-right activists, the thing that gives me comfort is that they're just as awful to each other as they are to their enemies. Whatever organizing they accomplish quickly falls apart when they start effing each other's wives. I was not aware of that dynamic. Tic-tac-toe. Candace needs a bunch of those boards with red string and connecting a bunch of photos. And the final I am of the week. It's not delivery, it's Bongino. Every time I watch Candace, all I can think is, good Lord, there's people in the world living with her as their mother. Bradley, Matt, great job this week. Emma, wait, today's Wednesday.
Should be back tomorrow.
Yes. Emma will be back tomorrow. It's a partial week. Half week. Oh, boy. All right, folks, Emma will be back tomorrow. I'll see you Friday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah.